Rome, 79 AD. A slave auction in the Forum. A young man sells for 500 denarii. 3 stalls down, a merchant uncorks a small amphora of golden liquid. The bidding starts at 1,000. This is garum, fermented fish guts, and in the Roman Empire, it's worth more than human life itself. The Romans called it liquamen. We'd call it rotten fish sauce. But emperors, senators, and even slaves would kill for a taste of this funky, fermented obsession. To understand how decomposed fish intestines became liquid gold, we need to travel to the coastal factories where the Mediterranean sun turned death into fortune. Welcome to the Garum factories of Pompeii, where the smell of decay masks the scent of money, and 10,000 mackerel die every single day. This is the story of Rome's most valuable condiment, how it was made, why it cost a fortune, and why Pliny the Elder said it smelled like death but tasted like the ocean's soul. 350 BC. A Greek fishing village on the Mediterranean coast. Someone made a catastrophic mistake. They left barrels of fish guts mixed with salt sitting in the blazing sun for months. The smell was ungodly. Neighbors complained. Flies swarmed. But when a brave soul finally opened the barrel, they found something impossible. A clear, amber liquid that smelled like death, but tasted like concentrated ocean. This wasn't rotten fish. This was garum, and it was about to change cuisine forever. The discovery was likely an accident repeated across cultures. Phoenicians, Greeks, and Carthaginians all had versions. But the Romans turned it into an obsession. The recipe was deceptively simple. Take fatty fish, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, mix with their own intestines, add massive amounts of salt, then wait. 6 months minimum. The Mediterranean sun did the rest. Heat activated enzymes in the fish guts that broke down proteins into amino acids. The salt prevented true rot. What emerged was liquid umami, the same compounds that make Parmesan and soy sauce addictive. But here's what made garum different from every other fermented fish sauce. Romans didn't just stumble into it. They engineered it. They turned accidental alchemy into industrial science. The best garum came from specific fish caught at specific times. Spring mackerel, fat with spawning season. Their guts were richest in the enzymes needed for proper fermentation. In coastal towns like Pompeii, entire economies ran on fermented fish guts. The stench was permanent. The profits were staggering. One factory could process 10,000 mackerel per day. Blood, guts, heads, tails, everything went into the vats. Nothing wasted. The Romans had accidentally invented industrial-scale fermentation centuries before anyone understood microbiology. The waiting was excruciating. 6 months of checking, stirring, tasting. Too soon and you had rotten fish. Too late and the flavors became harsh. The master garumakers, the salsamentari, knew the exact moment. When it was ready, the liquid was pressed and filtered through wicker baskets. The clear amber fluid was garum. The thick sludge left behind, that was alec, the cheap version sold to common soldiers. The finest garum, Garum sociorum from Spain, was crystal clear, pale gold, and cost more than a healthy slave. One small jar could buy a month's wages for a laborer. Pliny the Elder, Rome's greatest natural historian, was both disgusted and fascinated. He wrote that garum was made from the putrefaction of decaying matter, yet admitted every kitchen in Rome kept a supply. Because once you tasted it, there was no going back. Garum didn't just add salt, it added depth, complexity, that mysterious fifth taste the Romans couldn't name but couldn't live without. From dormice to honeyed wine, from oysters to roasted boar, garum touched everything. The rotten fish guts of the Mediterranean had become the empire's most essential flavor. The Roman garum industry wasn't quaint fishing villages, it was brutal industrial capitalism. Archaeologists have uncovered factory complexes covering entire city blocks, where 10,000 fish were processed every single day. The town of Bailo Claudia in southern Spain existed for one purpose: turning fish guts into fortune. Its factories alone could produce 50,000 liters of garum annually. Workers, mostly slaves, stood knee-deep in blood and brine, gutting mackerel at inhuman speed. The intestines went into one vat, the flesh into another. Nothing was wasted. Each factory had dozens of salting tanks called citariae, some large enough to hold 3 grown men. They've survived 2,000 years, still stained with salt deposits. The Romans engineered precise drainage systems, aqueducts for fresh seawater, and covered aging rooms. This wasn't craft fermentation. This was Ford Motor Company in 100 AD. These weren't family recipes passed down through generations. Factory owners hired Garum masters who commanded salaries higher than military officers because one miscalculation could ruin 50,000 fish. The smell was apocalyptic. Pliny the Elder reported that garum factories had to be built outside city limits because the stench of rotting fish intestines in the Mediterranean sun violated decency laws. But the profit margins were obscene. A single amphora of premium garum, the first pressed liquid, could sell for 1,000 sesterces. A trained slave cost 500. Entire dynasties rose from fish guts. The Ambricius family of Pompeii built a mansion with mosaic floors and private baths purely from their garum monopoly. Some factories specialized. Gade's modern Cadiz was famous for garum made exclusively from mackerel blood. Carthage produced a version using only tuna liver. Brand identity mattered even then. The garum industrial complex created shipping empires. Amphorae stamped with factory marks have been found in Britain, Egypt, and the Black Sea, a Mediterranean condiment achieving global distribution. When Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii in 79 AD, it flash froze a garum factory mid-production. Archaeologists found amphorae still sealed, fish bones still in vats, fortunes literally frozen in time. This fermented fish empire would dominate Roman cuisine for 6 centuries, until the very collapse of Rome itself killed the supply chains that made liquid gold from rotting intestines. Emperor Elagabalus serves his dinner guests peas mixed with gold and lentils with pearls. But the real luxury? The garum he drowns it all in, costing 1,000 sesterces per pint. While a trained slave costs 500 sesterces, a single jar of premium garum sociorum from Spain commands double that. Rome's elite are spending more on fermented fish guts than human lives. Apicius, Rome's most famous gourmand, writes the recipe everyone copies. Take the sauce, add wine, add garum. His cookbook mentions it 349 times. There is no Roman cooking without it. Breakfast? Bread dipped in garum. Lunch? Vegetables drizzled with garum. Dinner? Roasted dormice basted in, you guessed it, garum mixed with honey and poppy seeds. They even spike their wine with it. Enogarium, literally garum wine, is the cocktail of choice. Imagine your Chardonnay mixed with fish sauce. Romans called it sophisticated. This fermented fish intestine explosion became Rome's ultimate status symbol, the umami bomb that proved you'd made it to the top of the empire's food chain. But why this obsession? Roman cuisine is notoriously bland. No tomatoes, no peppers, no potatoes. Garum is their flavor revolution, their MSG, their liquid umami in a world of boiled grains. Pliny the Elder documents the madness. It is scarcely possible to mention a liquid more highly valued except for perfumes. Perfumes. He's comparing rotten fish to luxury fragrances. The elite develop connoisseur palates. They debate vintage years like wine snobs. Ah yes, this garum from Carthago Nova. I detect notes of summer mackerel with hints of Mediterranean salt breeze. Senator Seneca complains his neighbors are bankrupting themselves on imported garum when local versions exist. The fish sauce arms race is destroying Roman family fortunes. Martial, the poet, mocks a social climber who serves cheap garum at fancy dinners. In Rome, your sauce choice reveals everything. Garum is social currency, class warfare in a bottle. Even gladiators get their garum ration, Posca acidum mixed with cheap fish sauce for endurance. If it's good enough for men fighting lions, it's essential for senators debating in the forum. Medical texts prescribe it for everything: dog bites, ulcers, tuberculosis, dysentery. Galen claims certain garums cure chronic illnesses. It's food, medicine, and status symbol combined. The Roman military runs on it. Legions marching to Britannia carry amphorae of garum alongside their weapons. You can't conquer the world on bland porridge. You need that umami motivation. From emperor to slave, soldier to senator, every Roman craves the same thing: that amber liquid that somehow makes death smell taste like the ocean's captured soul. This is garum's golden age. Pliny the Elder had a problem. The most respected natural historian in Rome was obsessed with a condiment he publicly called rotten gore and putrefied fish intestines. But in private, he couldn't stop eating it. In his encyclopedia Naturalis Historia, Pliny devoted entire chapters to garum. documenting every variety, every region, every price point. His descriptions veered between scientific disgust and reluctant admiration. He wrote that garum smelled like death itself, that it was made from the putrid liquid of decomposing matter. Then, in the same breath, he'd describe its exquisite flavor and note which emperor preferred which vintage. Pliny recorded that a single jar of garum sociorum, the elite Spanish variety, cost 1,000 sesterces. That's more than a healthy slave, more than 4 months of a Roman soldier's salary, for fermented fish guts. But here's where it gets interesting. Pliny wasn't just documenting garum, he was exposing Rome's biggest food fraud scandal. The black market was flooding the empire with fake fish sauce. The knockoffs were everywhere: cheap garum cut with seawater, artificial coloring from saffron or oak bark. Some didn't contain fish at all, just salt water, vinegar, and food dye. The Roman FDA didn't exist. This wasn't just about taste. Pliny documented deaths from contaminated counterfeit garum. The real stuff was safe. The fermentation process killed pathogens. The fakes, they could kill you. So why did Pliny keep eating it despite his own warnings? Because authentic garum wasn't just safe, it was legitimately delicious. Even he couldn't deny the umami explosion that transformed every dish it touched. He identified the secret. The 6-month fermentation under Mediterranean sun broke down fish proteins into free glutamates. Ancient Rome had accidentally invented pure umami centuries before Japan named it. Pliny cataloged 13 varieties: garum from mackerel, from tuna, from sea urchins, liquamen versus muria versus alec. Each had devotees who'd fight over which fish guts fermented best. The counterfeiting got so bad that garum producers started stamping their amphorae with elaborate seals, ancient trademarks. Some even embedded lead tags inside the clay that couldn't be forged. Pliny documented the telltale signs of fake garum: wrong viscosity, off-color, lack of that distinctive aged smell he both loved and hated. Real garum had what he called noble rot: complex, layered, alive. But here's Pliny's ultimate hypocrisy. While writing about garum's dangers, he was investing in garum factories. His family owned processing plants in Pompeii. He was literally profiting from the rotten gore he condemned. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it preserved Pliny's secret. Archaeologists found his family's garum facilities perfectly intact, along with financial records showing the fortune he'd made from fermented fish intestines. The scandal wasn't that garum was disgusting. The scandal was that Rome's most famous food critic publicly shamed what he privately loved and secretly sold. Pliny died covering his nose while counting his garum money. 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire collapses. Within a generation, the garum factories fall silent. The amphoras stop shipping. A condiment that dominated tables for 700 years simply vanishes from history. But how does the world's most popular sauce just disappear? The answer lies in what made garum Roman in the first place. It wasn't just food, it was infrastructure. Garum required industrial-scale fishing fleets, coordinated supply chains, and a wealthy empire willing to pay premium prices. When Rome fractured, so did the economics of fermented fish. The Christian Church didn't help. Fasting days banned luxurious foods. Garum, associated with pagan Roman excess and gluttony, became culturally suspect overnight. Regional fish sauces survived: Vietnamese nuoc mam, Thai nam pla, Korean, but Europe forgot. For 1,500 years, garum became a footnote, a curiosity in ancient texts. Here's the twist. We never stopped craving it. We just didn't know what we were missing. That umami depth? We've been chasing it ever since with Worcestershire sauce, anchovy paste, soy sauce. Then archaeologists started excavating those silent factories. In Spain, Portugal, Morocco, they found the vats, the recipes scratched in Latin, even residue in 2,000-year-old amphoras. 2012, a Spanish company called Flor de Garum launches using Roman recipes from Pompeii. Chefs go wild. Suddenly, garum is in Michelin-starred restaurants from Copenhagen to Tokyo. René Redzepi at Noma starts fermenting grasshoppers using garum techniques. The ancient method becomes cutting edge again. What's old becomes revolutionary. Today, you can buy garum online. Small batch producers in Italy, Spain, and even Oregon are reviving the emperor's condiment, one fermented anchovy at a time. But it's not just nostalgia. Scientists now understand why garum worked. The fermentation breaks down fish proteins into pure glutamates. It's umami in its most concentrated form. We're rediscovering what Rome knew, that controlled rot, given time and salt, transforms death into something extraordinary. The ocean's soul, as Pliny called it, never really died. The condiment that cost more than a slave, that built fortunes and flavored empires, is back. And it tastes exactly like it did when Caesar drizzled it on his dormice. From the ashes of fallen factories to the tables of the world's best restaurants, Garum has completed its 1,500-year journey. The forbidden sauce is forbidden no more. For 2,000 years, we dismissed garum as a barbaric relic, a curiosity of Roman excess. But walk into any modern kitchen and you'll find its descendants. Fish sauce, Worcestershire, anchovy paste. The Romans didn't discover fermentation by accident. They industrialized it. Those coastal factories weren't primitive. They were biochemical laboratories operating at a scale we barely matched until the 20th century. 10,000 mackerel processed daily, precise salt ratios, temperature control through vat placement, aging schedules recorded on amphorae like vintage wine bottles. This was food science. Modern molecular gastronomy chefs are rediscovering what Rome knew. Controlled decay creates complexity. That funky 6-month fermentation wasn't rot, it was transformation. Proteins breaking into pure umami. Today, restaurants from Copenhagen to Tokyo are brewing their own garum, not as nostalgia, but as innovation, because those Roman factories understood something we're only now remembering. The umami explosion that flavored an empire never really disappeared. It just changed names, crossed oceans, became Vietnamese nuoc mam and Thai nam pla. The technique survived even when Rome fell. We forgot that our ancestors were food scientists, that a jar worth more than a slave represented centuries of accumulated knowledge about microbiology, chemistry, and taste, disguised as rotten fish guts. The garum renaissance isn't about recreating the past. It's about recognizing that those stinking factories on the Spanish coast were doing something revolutionary, turning death into flavor, decay into luxury. Pliny was right about one thing. It did smell like death. But he was also right about the rest. It tasted like the ocean's soul. And that soul is still flavoring our food 2 millennia later. Every drop of fish sauce in your pad thai, every dash of Worcestershire on your steak, every anchovy dissolving into Caesar dressing. That's Rome's fermented legacy, still exploding with umami on your tongue. The forbidden became the familiar. The Roman ketchup never died. It just went underground, crossed continents, and waited for us to remember why entire fortunes were built on fermented intestines aged in the Mediterranean sun. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos.